In this video, we will show you how to replace your steering wheel wiring harness on this Chevy Tahoe. This will be located behind the airbag on your steering wheel. Let's get into it. Okay friends, let's get started on our job. The first thing you're going to want to do is make your way over to the negative battery terminal. We'll use an 8mm to remove this and set it aside from the battery. Now, once you've disconnected that negative battery terminal, you want to make sure you wait approximately 5 minutes. After that, make your way into the passenger compartment. We'll be using a dull pick and come along each side of the steering wheel. You'll be looking for this small circular hole right here. Carefully go inside with your dull pick and press it in. On the inside of this area, there's a small locking tab. Once you have that pressed in, you can grab onto that airbag and gently pull it away from the steering wheel. Once you've done one side, do the exact same thing on the other side of the steering wheel. The hole is in the same position, just on the opposite side. With both of those disconnected, we can move along to disconnecting the airbag system. Now with this pulled away, we have a clear look at the back side of the airbag. You can see that you have two different color connectors. For these connectors, you want to make your way to each side of them, squeeze in on the locking tabs, and carefully remove them. We'll give them a quick check for corrosion. You can set that one aside, do the same to the other. Carefully set your airbag aside. Now we can follow the wiring harness in a little further to where this black electrical connector is. For this, you can take hold of that, give it a little wiggle, and slide it straight down. Once you have that out of place, we'll continue on to disconnecting it. In this area where my small pocket screwdriver is, there's a small locking tab. Just carefully get underneath that area and separate the wiring harness. A quick check for corrosion, of course. Now we'll move along to where these two little red wires connect into this white connector. Take hold of that white connector, press it in, and twist it counterclockwise until it's unlocked. After that, you can remove it. There's the two little locking tabs right along there. The next thing we'll do is move along to our 21mm mounting nut. Before you remove that nut, you want to pay attention inside this area. You'll find that you have an arrow, and then if you were to look at the shaft that comes through, you're going to find that you have a small slotted area. Those two areas should be aligned. If for some reason yours does not have the notch or the arrow, you want to make sure that you mark this in some way, so when you go to put everything back together, the steering wheel will still be straight. Otherwise, it will be off kilter and you're going to have an issue. Now let's use our 21mm to remove this mounting nut. Once you've done that, you can take hold of the steering wheel, carefully give it a little wiggle side to side and up and down as needed. We're trying to pull it away without damaging the steering wheel. There we are. As we pull it through, you want to make sure that you also put the wiring harness through the hole in the bottom of the steering wheel. Looking at the back side of the steering wheel, we're going to be removing this plastic panel. To do that, you'll find that you have two T20 screws holding it in place, one over here and one directly across from it. Remove the pair. Remove the trim panel. Now we can have a look from the front of the steering wheel. You'll find that you have several switches. Behind each one of these switches is an electrical connector. We'll use a small screwdriver. Carefully get in between this area and gently pry it out of place, being extremely careful not to damage the steering wheel or the switch in any way. At this point, we'll continue on with that small pocket screwdriver, press in on the locking tab, and remove that wiring harness from the back side of the switch. A quick check for corrosion on the switch. Now the next thing we'll do is just give this a slight tug to pull it out of the back side of the steering wheel. At this point, it's always a good idea to take that switch and just carefully slide it into place. You don't need to press it all the way in because we will be removing it. Move along to the next switch. We'll do the same for all. If you find that the wiring harness is too taut to remove the switch, we'll just make our way along the backside here and remove it from this area. We'll slide that wiring harness out. At this point, you can remove the wiring harness. There it is, friends. One last thing on the steering wheel. The way that we had disconnected the wiring harness, we slid it out of place. At this point, we can remove this little adapter because the new wiring harness comes with one. We'll use a small trim tool and carefully remove it. All right, let's get ready for the installation of our brand new wiring harness. We'll start by pressing in the electrical connector into the proper hole. Now, once you've done that, we'll be taking the wiring and putting it into the proper placement. Just bring each side down. Now that we have that pressed into position, you want to make sure that you have the wiring harness going in the proper direction. If we were heading over towards where the driver's side would be, which is the area with the program and the source buttons, you want to make sure that you have the wiring connector that has the two green wires, the brown, and the black. Also on this side, we have another wiring connector that has a black, a blue, a yellow, and a brown. Now, with that said, we can carefully remove one of our switches right up along the top here. And for this one, we'll be taking the one with the two green wires and slide it up and through the back side of the steering wheel. With that in the upright position, continue on to connecting in your switch. Make sure you have the locking tab aligned with the locking area on the switch itself. Press it in and listen for a click. We'll give it a little tug just to make sure it's secure, and then press it into position, making sure it's facing in the proper direction. Continue on to your next switch. For this switch, we'll be using the black, blue, yellow, and brown wire connector. With this in the upright position, we'll just go ahead and lock this in. You can use some small pliers, small screwdriver, whatever you have to hold the wiring harness. Listen for a click, give it a tug, and slide it into the proper position. Now that we've completed one side, we'll make our way over to the other side. For these switches, the top switch will be using the two greens, the black, the brown, and the white. The next switch down will be the black, the orange, the green, and the brown. Got a nice click there. Align it properly, slide it in. Now, once you've done all that, it's a good idea to just resecure all the wiring. Along the backside, let's continue on to that trim panel. We'll slide it into place, making sure that we are not pinching any of the wires. Continue on with your two T20 Torx head screws. Now back inside the vehicle, we'll continue on with our wiring harnesses that are attached to the steering column. slide them through the rectangular looking hole along the bottom of the steering wheel. Once you have those through, we'll continue aligning the steering wheel with the steering shaft. Once again, you want to make sure you have those markings aligned properly. If you're off by even one tooth, the steering wheel will be off kilter. Go ahead and press that in. Continue on with your mounting nut. We'll start this on by hand. At this point, we can bottom this out. Now we'll make sure that it's properly torqued to 29 foot-pounds. Double check to make sure it's completely secure. Now we can continue on to the horn button. Let's take this and slide it into position, turn it clockwise until it locks in. Give it a little wiggle to make sure it is secured. Now we'll continue on to our black connector here. Just go ahead and pivot it as needed and connect it in. We'll put it behind the red wire. Listen for a click from that. Make sure that's secure. Continue on to the horn pad with the airbag unit. Along the backside, you can tell exactly where each one of the connectors goes. We have a pink area here for the pink connector. This one over here is for the other connector. Press it in, listen for a click, give it a tug. Now we can take this horn pad airbag unit and put it in position. You want to pay attention to these two studs. They will go into their corresponding holes in the steering wheel. Let's get that aligned, press it in. Listen for a click, give it a wiggle, make sure it's secure. Let's make our way back under the hood, reconnect that negative battery terminal. Make sure you start it in by hand so you're sure it is not cross-threading into the battery. Snug it up with your 8mm wrench and make sure it's nice and tight. We'll give that terminal a little wiggle, close the hood, make your way back to the passenger compartment. Now inside the passenger compartment, go ahead and put the key in the on position and test all of your buttons' functionality.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.